Welcome to this webinar, and the supplier engagement webinar for the deployment of AS13100. And my name is Lena Eckerbom Wendel, and I'm the chairperson of the SMIG for the design work. And the topic for today would be AS13100 in general, the design aspects of this standard in particular, and then we'll have a Q&A session so that anyone who's wondering something or wants to give us some tips can let us know later on. So, this team that will be presenting this webinar today, we are the team subject matter interest group for the design work, and we are responsible for two of the reference manuals related to the AS13100, the RM13008 for design work, and the RM13011 for rework and production repair currently. We are updating both those documents, so if you have any ideas for updates, please let us know in the Q&A session, and we'll take those into account. So, today's webinar will be recorded, so for those who are not joining today, it's possible to join later. The questions for the Q&A session we will take in through the chat feature. So, and it's okay to start writing questions as soon as you think of them, or you can add them later on when we come to the Q&A part of this presentation. So, thank you. Let's get going.
Good morning. I am Kristen Gantz. I'm from GE, and I'm part of the Design SMIG. I'm going to talk a little bit about the foundations and the OEM design hierarchy and why we are where we are today. So 10 years ago, our whole industry was presented with a problem. Not a bad problem, good problem. We're going to double in our projected passenger size. We're increasing the level of our supplier-made content. We were a global footprint. But something we had in common amongst all of us is we use the same suppliers. And we all were striving for zero defects, and we all had the same common goal about improving the safety, quality, delivery, and cost of our products. So in 2013, the aero industry formed this collaboration to start working to fix some of the challenges that we all share together. So just a little background here. All of us have several places where requirements come from. We have regulatory requirements. We have different standards and specific customer requirements. But ultimately, our goal was to find a way to simplify all of these requirements that flow down to us and to harmonize the requirements that we deliver to our suppliers. So a quick visual here. Prior to us starting to work on the AS13100, this is just an example of how all of our customer and regulatory requirements flow down to us. They came to us, aero engine manufacturers, and each one of us had our own independent way of flowing these requirements down to our supply chain. Going forward, we continue to work to improve on this, but we're working towards coming up with a common quality management set of requirements that we can flow down to our engine supply chain. And we still have some customer-specific requirements, and those are due to regulatory differences mostly. So a quick hierarchy for our specific design requirements. And we've got some examples here also from both I believe GE and Rolls, but this is just a flow down showing how our regulatory requirements come into our OEM requirements and how that kind of splits off into our internal versus our supplier requirements, and then how we flow down those quality requirements, engineering requirements to our suppliers that do our design hardware. So ultimately, our vision is to strive to zero defects. So we want to establish and maintain a common set of requirements, not only quality, but also our engineering requirements that enable us to have a global supply chain, to be competitive, to be lean, to be capable, and then have a culture of continuous improvement. So in summary, we're all here because we want to simplify and standardize our requirements for our suppliers, create a common language for quality, build on our existing industry standards where they exist, create requirements that are simple, deliver results quickly, and promote the use of standardized third-party training while focusing on effective and supportive deployment.
I'm Pete Bilby, work for Rolls-Royce. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Subject Matter Interest Group for Design and Rework, as we mentioned earlier. I'm going to take a few minutes of your time this afternoon, to take you through and remind you about the reference material, the reference manuals that the ASQ provide in relation to AS13100. So, AS13100 is the standard that we've mandated and joined together to create. To support that, there are a number of supplementary reference materials that are available via the ASQ website that are free to download, and they give you information and industry best practice and guidance and pieces of case study material on how to deploy certain tools and aspects related to the area of interest of the subject matter interest group. Each of these reference manuals has been created by, as I say, the subject matter interest groups, and we've got a number of those that are supported by all the OEMs and a number of suppliers who are helping us on this journey. These are under constant revision and are quite regularly updated, so keep your eye out on that website for any updates to the reference materials. I'm going to quickly show you, if you follow the web link that was on the previous slide, the type of screenshots that you'll see. So on the left-hand side is the entry point for the supplementary materials. It's probably a little hard to see on the slide, but towards the bottom on the left-hand side there are a list of all the RMs that are associated to the standard. So, effectively, each of the RMs are free to download, as I mentioned earlier, and if you click on the link for the RM that you're interested in, you'll get a little screen come up where you put in your details, and it effectively allows you to download the material to your laptop or your IT that you've got. You'll see on the right-hand side there is a screenshot of the front page for RM13008, which is the design work supplementary. That's been put together by the subject matter interest group that we are all part of here today. There is additional supplementary information available, and this is being added to all the time. Things such as templates, forms, and that type of thing to help supplement the reference material. I'm just showing on the screen there, for example, the quality audit methods have already published some supplementary templates. We currently haven't done any yet from a design perspective, but we're working that in the background. So keep your eye out, there will be additional things that will come on there in the future. So, as I mentioned earlier, each of these reference materials is put together by a subject matter interest group. And the one that I'm part of, the one that Lena's part of, and Kirsten today, is all around design, which is why you're all listening today, because you've all got a keen interest around the design aspects of the standard. So we publish RM13008 and 1311 around that. So the subject matter interest groups is effectively like a community of practice that we've got. So we've got subject matter experts from all companies that are part of the AESQ. So we're very proud on the design subject matter interest group to have all prime OEMs from the engine industry, as well as a lot of big suppliers on there. Having suppliers on the subject matter interest groups allows us to have a look at it from a supplier perspective in terms of what good looks like, what they struggle with, and basically use that as the fuel, if you like, to power the interest group to try and move us forward, to try and give a clear message in terms of what the requirements are and how to meet those requirements from a design perspective. If I just quickly look at RM13008, and this is a helicopter view, top level, I'm going to pass you over to a colleague of mine, Michael, from MTU in Germany. He's going to quickly take you through some of the key aspects that we've got within that.
Thank you, Pete. Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to show you a brief overview about the topics our reference manual 13008 design work. You can see here 6 of our main chapters, starting with design definitions, which shows some new wording so that we can have a common language talking in our business. Then we have the technical delegation. That means how we can delegate engineering approvals on behalf of an aero engine manufacturer. Then we have the topic design reviews, which shows a number of required and some other design reviews for our engineering work. Then we have a chapter about verification and certification, including the verification planning with validation activities, and at least the certification by an respective authority. Then there's a topic about feature unique identification. Here we talk about a numbering system defined by the design, which goes over to production. And then we have the design technical package. It means an overview about all the required documents for our design definition, like specifications, review results, and for example, detailed drawing. So with these activities, we address feedback and focus on best practice, prepared for you, standardization of these subjects areas. The next slide, I want to show you an example, because currently we're working on an overview about the required design reviews regarding your tasks as a design supplier. So the reason for that is that we have to align the best practice design reviews with the APQP, Advanced Product Quality Requirements. As you can see here, there are only set 2 design reviews, a preliminary design review required by APQP and another critical design review required by APQP 2. And the challenge here is to speak the same language, to find the right names and dates for conducting these reviews. And when we start on the left, after the project launch, regarding the 5 APQP phases. And here we are focused on the planning or concept phase, phase 1, and the product design and development phase, phase 2. And first review, you can proceed with the requirements design review, where you get an overview about the customer's needs, then you can perform a conceptual design review with the first ideas you have for your concept, and then you have the preliminary design review, which is always called end of concept review or detailed design review. Here we have to standardize the project, like I said before, for the release of the concept. Then you have at the end of phase 2 this critical design review, which is called final design review or design release review, when the detailed phase is completed, and you have the opportunity to perform additional reviews. So that's all from my side, and I give back to Pete.
Thank you, Michael. That was a good introduction to one of the things that we've started to look at, and I say more things will be added to the reference material going forwards. I just want to quickly sort of go through some of the sort of key elements of the supplemental that we've got, and effectively the introduction of APQP. This has been introduced. Some of the OEMs have had that in place previously, but now we're starting to standardise that and roll that out for all new, managing new designs and any changes to designs going forwards. We've also pulled together some best practice in terms of DFMEA or DFMEA, as some people refer to, and we've effectively standardised the approach that we're wishing to roll out and get the supply chain to actually utilise to improve what we're doing going forwards. Like with all things, design it's a team sport. It's not an individual thing. We're trying to emphasise the importance of having cross-functional teams around design for servicing or disposal, and so there are some techniques in there that we've got that we're utilising. It's not in our reference material RM13008, it's in 13004, where there's a number of key tools that are being rolled out across the standard that we're trying to use going forwards. Finally, we're specifying the use of AS13100 to manage any design changes that we have going forward. So, just to summarise, so get onto the website, have a look at the reference materials that are appropriate to design, but also make sure you look at the ones 13004, which has the methodologies around DFMEA, DFX, that type of thing going forward. So, at that point, we're going to throw open the session and look at any questions that we've had in from our audience today. So if you've not actually put anything in already, if you've got any key burning issues or things you want resolved or things you want to make, feel free to put those in the chat function. And what we're going to do is go through those and hopefully answer anything that comes in from you guys. Obviously, the more involved you get with this, the more we can try and help you reaching out. This won't be your only opportunity to ask questions. We're always open to questions. There is details on the website where you can get in touch with the subject matter interest group to try and resolve any issues you may have. So, have we got any questions that have come in, guys? So I'm asking around the room now, virtually.
Nothing on the chat line yet. So yeah, if you're online and you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat bar, and we will answer that. We do have some questions that got submitted prior, so we can start to look at a couple of those and see if something comes in on the chat. So I'll cover a couple of the questions that got pre-submitted. So the first question is, does APQP apply to legacy hardware for design suppliers? It's a fairly common question. And the answer is yes, it applies to new hardware, Class 1 changes, and process changes and source changes for any new product introduction hardware developed after the end of 2022. If you're designing a legacy hardware change, really the intent we're looking for is that risk gets assessed. And so the requirements of that are going to vary somewhat based upon the program you're working on, your customer requirements. So really what you want to do is talk to your customer representative for exactly what is required, whether it's full APQP or some lesser version of that, depending upon the nature of the change in the program itself. Just looking, why don't we do another one of the pre-submitted ones? This question, and also this question I think has been asked a few different times. Why are we not considering integrating AS13100 with AS9100? And really the reason for this is because AS9100 is a general aerospace supplier quality specification, quality standard, and AS13100 is targeted for aero engines. There's some unique aspects around the regulatory and customer requirements that have to do with engines specifically, and so this approach has been taken where it's a standard that goes on top of or in addition to the requirements that are in AS9100.
Looks like we have another question come in there, actually. What about well-established companies that have not adopted FMEA as a tool? Is it ever too late to start FMEA? Does someone in the room want to answer that? Or do you want me to have a start? I'll go for it? Okay, yes. So basically, it's never too late to start using FMEA, yeah? It's a key sort of defect prevention tool that provides value at any stage in the life cycle, whether it be from the cradle to the grave. It's never too late to start looking at using it. It creates a structured approach to assess risk and how you mitigate those risks. And I firmly believe that any organisation will get benefit from it. Yeah. Go have a look at the methodology. Just dip your toe in. Just play around with it, and it's a really good way of de-risking what you're doing. Within the aerospace industry, we all must become experts on applying these type of techniques, and it'll help us on that vision of going to zero defects going forwards. So in answer, it's never too late. Have a go, have a play. If you've got any questions, feed them into the team, and we can help you. Yeah.
Okay, we've got another question here. Does APQP apply to both military and commercial hardware? Anyone want to jump on that one?
Sure. I think we discussed how there's each of the OEM companies have one quality system that applies across both military and commercial hardware and industrial hardware, for that matter. So the answer is yes. The APQP requirements apply universally.
Great, thanks, Scott. Okay, let's see, another question here. How are design changes handled after the critical design review? Is there another review with the customer to review design changes that occur during verification and validation? Or how does that work?
So I think this kind of falls in that category of supplemental requirements that each engine OEM applies beyond what's specified in AS13100 and APQP. The final design review per the chart that we showed earlier was that detailed, or that critical design review. But each OEM will have their own process for how they review validation results at the end of the process. So the expectation is that those are reviewed and that that's an independent review. So I think, again, contact your customer representative for details on what their exact process is, but there may be some variation from OEM to OEM.
Great, okay, thanks. Okay, let's see, we talked a little bit earlier about design for X, and so got a question on this, which is, what is the process for determining which design for X is required for design per AS13100?
So I can take that if you like. So the standard doesn't effectively mandate that you do DFX for absolutely everything. It's got examples in there where it is a useful methodology and tool to try and help fix issues, try and iron out problems, etc. So the simple answer is it's dependent on what you're doing. It depends on the type of design you're doing, the component you're doing, whether you have concerns about its assembly, for example, its manufacture, for example, its serviceability. It's a framework that we use to try and actually move things forward. The simple answer is, we're asking you to do it because it's a good thing to do. We're not mandating that you do it for absolutely everything. It's very dependent on the type of commodity that you're supplying into the OEM and how that interacts with other elements of the design. So basically, it's dependent on what you're doing. Yeah, it's a useful framework.
Great, thank you, Pete. Thanks. Let's see here, a couple questions about the design technical data package. So there's a term in the standard says we have to include detailed drawings. What is the definition of detailed drawings listed in the design technical data package? Anybody want to take a shot at that one?
I'll take it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a good question, and I don't think there's a simple answer. Yeah, it is very dependent on any of the contractual arrangements you have with the OEM. So the OEM may be specific in terms of what they require in terms of detailed drawings and the level of detailed drawing that's required. So really, you need to get in contact with the OEM who is placing the order or the requirements on you, just to clarify exactly what they mean and exactly what they want. So it depends on the contractor arrangements, and it's not a very good answer, but we've got such a vast difference in terms of the way where we're coming from historically, that it's something that you need to talk back to the OEM.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, and I think it depends. A lot of it depends upon IP considerations, and even what the ultimate customer contractual requirements are. So it's very difficult to give a global answer on that one for sure. Yeah. And something that's sort of related to that, a follow-on question is whether it's required to provide all the detailed drawings to the customer, and if so, to what level, or is it only drawings that have key characteristics identified? And I think, just as Pete just said to the last question, again, I hate to say it depends, but it kind of does depend on the details of the exact arrangements, the customer, the end customer, and other considerations. So really talk to your customer representative and work that out on a case-by-case basis.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it's a team sport, basically, yeah? So a good team needs to communicate, needs to talk to each other, and iron out any I say differences of opinion, I don't mean that. Get a mutual understanding of what's required, yeah? It's a team sport, keep talking, yeah?
Okay, another question about the technical data package. Is a validation plan part of the design technical data package? And if not, why not? Anybody want to field that one? Go ahead, Lena.
Yeah, so it depends, again. The idea is that the validation plan is a part of that technical data package, but it's not necessarily sent to the customer. It is a design document that is important to make sure that we plan verification and validation in the correct way. But since all design suppliers have different scopes, it might not be applicable. So, well, it depends. We also had some discussion about the differences between verification and validation. And I think that last night when the team was discussing, we had a very good common understanding saying that verification would be very applicable to design suppliers, making sure that the design meets the requirements sent from the customer. And that validation normally for design suppliers is not applicable, since the validation will be done by the customer or the customer's customer on the system level. So both terms start with LFC, so it's like easy to interchange them when you're talking. But as long as you're in agreement with the customer, what are you supposed to do, what's the customer supposed to do, and how do we make sure that the design deliverables from the design supplier fits into the entire type design that the customer or the customer's customer should be okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last question, at least so far, on the DDTP is there some elements of the design technical data package that also look like they're elements within APQP and PPAP requirements? Can we spike out which ones those are so that it's clear which elements go in the multiple packages? Anybody want to grab that one?
I think we're still trying to align with this requirement. So a lot of it depends on how complicated the parts are, right? So as we go through and continue to define our process, we'll align to these PPAP requirements and make sure that we've got some language around it.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's fair to say, there's RM13008 is still being refined and matured, and that may be something that goes into it in the future. Great. Okay, I got a question here about test readiness reviews. Are there any test readiness reviews required with the customer prior to starting the verification or the validation test? So I think on this one, there's nothing that's specifically called out in the standard for that. However, more than likely the customer will have requirements or expectations on that on a program-by-program basis or a customer-specific basis. So again, you want to really, that this is a team sport. The standard answers a lot of questions, but there's no substitute for working closely with your customer and understanding exactly what's required for the project that you're working on.
I think it's worth pointing out that the standard is not intended to address all aspects of certification and qualification, right? It's intended to serve a specific role, right? So there's some things that come later in the validation process that still require a definition by the OEM.
One of the questions that's come in that I could probably handle, actually, it's very specific to Rolls-Royce, so I'll take it. Yeah, it's around the DFEMA, the DFMEA. Basically, previously, the question is, do I do it in accordance with the existing standard that Rolls-Royce has defined, or RDS 10048, or do I use the new methodology that's in the reference material that is associated to AS13100? Real simple answer to that. So RRDS 10048 was reviewed by the subject matter interest group around the methodologies that we have, and that has been effectively moved over into the supplementary material they have in RM13004. Not everything from 10048 made it into 13004, but going forward, you will be required to meet the requirements that are in the reference material associated to AS13100. So I hope that answers the question for you. Okay?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Okay, there's a question here about design development. So the question is, has the applicability of design development been clarified? Must the supplier have design authority for design development to be applicable? Or do the process development activities fall under design development as in IATF? Or do they fall under production planning? Someone want to take that one?
Okay, so again, it depends. But the thing, what we are trying to focus on this team would be the design aspect. So the aerospace authorities, at least in Europe, have a very strict division between design work and manufacturing. We currently focus on standardizing the design part of things. We have a lot of work to do there. It has a lot to do with terminology, since the design part of the business has not been very standardized before. Normally, previously, most of the design work was done within each OEM or with suppliers that were very tightly associated to one OEM. Now, when we're moving over to a business setting where one design supplier could work with many different OEMs, the need for standardization is becoming more and more urgent. And since we're early on that standardization journey, we haven't figured out what the answer will be, but we are working on initially finding a common terminology. So we probably mean the same things. We have the same regulatory requirements to meet at the end. But we use different words. We have classification of parts of features, but we use different names for those classes, and we have them slightly differently aligned. And if it's possible to find a common way of doing things, it will help us minimize the risk of mistakes.
Good. Thank you, Lena. Yeah, similar sort of question, again, sort of having to do around terminology. A couple questions here about the term design authority and what exactly does design authority mean? Is that simply the organization? Is that only the organization that holds the type certificate, or can it be other organizations? And what does design authority mean, and what capabilities do we intend that to have within the standard and the reference manual?
Currently, both the AS13100 and the RM13008 are being updated. And this is one of the things we'll need to align across the standard and the reference manual in this update. Design authority could mean, in one context, the organization who has or will have the type certificate. But it could also be an organization or an individual who has the authority to make design decisions, which is not the same entity. So when we use the same term for different entities, for different organizations or individuals, we get confusion, and we need to align this. So So that's one of the topics we have in this.
I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of these documents, right, is coming up with a common language across OEMs, but also across regulators, because terms like design authority have different interpretation at FAA and the EASA and other international regulators. So it's important that we standardize the language so that we are all talking the same thing.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So I've got a question here about design reviews. So within the RM says to avoid conflicts of interest, design reviews should be carried out by an independent review panel comprising individuals who have no direct involvement with the design itself. So who would that be? Who would be on that panel?
If you use in parallel the regulatory work for an independent checking of the results, it means that it's someone who's competent enough to do the work but wasn't directly involved. So the independence does not mean that it needs to be someone from a different company or a different organization. It just needs to be someone who did not do the work. So it might be that you need to have a whole team of reviewers so that you could get someone else checking it, even if you've been doing part of the work, but not that aspect of it. As a design supplier organizing a design review, you should have a process to identify the people needed for each review, just to make them independent enough to meet the purpose of the review.
But the RM doesn't try to specify exactly who those people are. I think it's left to the design organizations to decide who the right people are and who the right adjacent organizations need to be.
Great. Okay, thanks. Okay, let's see, another question here about the RM. So this is regarding key characteristics. Section 9.2 discusses key characteristics as applied to design. Why doesn't it discuss key characteristics as applied to the process? Where would those be defined?
Yeah, as I said earlier, this team focuses on what's on the design side of things. So we are defining more reference material for design key characteristics and design critical items. But that does not mean that there are other key characteristics and critical items also, but those will need to be defined by another team or by us later if our scope will also include manufacturing later. But we're starting with the design and there's sufficient issues to solve there.
Great, okay. Are there other questions?
Yes, please feel free to ask questions to the chat.
I think we've made it through all the questions we have so far, yeah.
I think it's worth just pointing out, if, after today's webinar, you suddenly have got a question and you thought, I should have asked that, just reach out to us, Our details are on the website. We're easily contactable. We will look at those questions as part of our regular meetings that we have as a subject matter interest group. We generally meet every 2 weeks virtually. So we're always talking to each other. We're always sharing ideas. So, if you've got the slightest question or the slightest thing you're not sure about, just reach out, We're all quite friendly, we're not going to blow your head off or anything like that. Just ask. It's good,
The whole purpose of this document is to try to clarify, right? So if things are not sufficiently clear, that feedback is what we need.
Absolutely. And it's sometimes difficult, we look at it through our eyes. You need different pairs of eyes looking at the requirements, at the reference material, because someone will always see something different or read something differently into it or interpret it slightly differently. So never be afraid to ask a question. It's almost like a childlike mentality, You're walking around the supermarket, your child will ask you, why is that like that? Well, answer the question, and then they'll learn. That's the only way we'll learn. At that point, I'll shut up.
Okay, so no more questions in the chat and no other pre-submitted questions. So let's continue. Yeah, there should be another slide. I'm just trying to move to the next slide. Okay, summary and close. And then there's very quickly another slide saying that all the resources from this presentation will be available on the AS2 website within a few days. Those who registered to the webinar will also get a link directly, but it's available for everyone. And the idea is also to invite more questions, give us more ideas on how to make the standard and the reference manuals better. The design team is very cross-functional. We have a lot of different competences from different companies, a lot of experience from both within aerospace and outside of aerospace. But we need help. Send us your ideas. We all try to make the documents better, and they will be evolving over time. On the AS2 website, there's contact information for us, and we also have a LinkedIn page with a community of practice where we're trying to get more of a informal way of asking questions and getting answers. So please join our group on LinkedIn, ask us questions there, start a dialogue with us, and we'll get to a very much better place. Standardization is beautiful. Let's help each other to standardize also the design side of aerospace engineering and manufacturing. And thank you for everyone for participating, both those in the team participating on the presenter side and everyone calling in, and also everyone listening afterwards. Thank you very much.